Captain Minjun Park stood on the observation deck of Earth's orbital station, watching the massive alien ships block out the stars. The vessels were huge, each one the size of a small city. They had appeared without warning 3 hours ago, cutting off all traffic to and from Earth. "Sir, they're requesting communication," said Lieutenant Sarah Chen from her console. Her voice was steady, but Minjun could see her hands shaking slightly. "Put them through," Minjun replied, straightening his uniform. This was humanity's first contact with an alien species, and he wanted to make a good impression. The main screen flickered to life, showing a creature that made Minjun's blood run cold. General Vex Thara stood nearly 8 feet tall, covered in dark scales that gleamed under bright lights. His yellow eyes were cold and calculating, like a predator studying its prey. Sharp teeth showed when he spoke, and his voice was deep and threatening. "I am General Vex Thara of the Corvan Empire," the alien said, without any greeting. "You will surrender your world immediately." Minjun blinked in surprise. "I'm Captain Park, representing Earth's Global Defense Council. Perhaps we can discuss—" "There is nothing to discuss," Vex Thara interrupted, his tail swishing behind him in annoyance. "Your species will provide tribute to the Corvan Empire. You will give us 30% of all your resources every year. You will also provide 50,000 of your people to serve as workers in our colonies." The bridge fell silent. Minjun felt his stomach drop as he understood what the alien was really saying. They wanted to enslave humans. "That's impossible," Minjun said, trying to keep his voice calm. "We can't agree to those terms. Perhaps we can find another arrangement." General Vex Thara's laugh was like the sound of breaking glass. "Arrangement? You think you have a choice? We have conquered 847 worlds. Every species learns to obey the Corvan Empire. You will be no different." Dr. Soo-young Kim, who had been listening from her position near the science station, stepped forward. "How many species have actually agreed to these terms?" she asked. Vex Thara looked at her with obvious disgust. "All of them. Eventually. Some require more convincing than others." The alien gestured to something off-screen, and the view changed to show one of the Corvan ships. Weapon ports were opening along its hull, revealing enormous cannons. "These weapons can destroy your cities from orbit. Your primitive technology cannot stop us." Number 1. Admiral Jung-Ho Lee, who had arrived during the conversation, moved to stand beside Minjun. His face was hard as stone. "And if we refuse? Then we will demonstrate our power on one of your major population centers," Vex Thara said casually, as if discussing the weather. "Perhaps the city you call New York, or London. After we destroy a few million of your people, the rest will be more reasonable." Minjun felt anger burning in his chest. This creature was talking about murdering millions of innocent people like it was nothing. "You're talking about genocide." "I am talking about efficiency," the general replied. "We could simply destroy your entire world and take what we want from the ruins. But living slaves are more useful than dead ones. You should be grateful we are offering you the chance to serve." Dr. Kim stepped forward again, her scientific mind working even in this terrible situation. "Why do you need tribute? Your empire must be incredibly wealthy with so many worlds under your control." Vex Thara's eyes narrowed. "Wealth means nothing without power to protect it. Every species pays tribute to prove they remember their place. It reminds them that the Corvan Empire is their master." "And the people you take as slaves?" Admiral Lee asked. "They work in dangerous places where we prefer not to risk Corvan lives," the general said. "Mining operations, factory worlds, experimental colonies. Most survive long enough to be useful." The casual cruelty in his words made Minjun's hands clench into fists. He had spent years training for first contact, imagining meeting peaceful explorers or curious scientists. He had never imagined meeting something like this. You have 72 hours to prepare your tribute. Vexthara continued. Send your leaders to negotiate the details. Try to run, and we will hunt you down. Try to fight, and we will make your deaths slow and painful. The choice is yours. The screen went black, leaving the bridge in stunned silence. Sir, Lieutenant Chen said quietly, we're receiving similar broadcasts on all emergency frequencies. They're making sure everyone on Earth hears their demands. Minjun nodded slowly, his mind racing. Down on the planet's surface, billions of people were learning that aliens existed, and that those aliens wanted to enslave humanity. Contact Earth Command, Admiral Lee ordered. Get me a priority line to every world leader. We need an emergency session of the Global Defense Council within the hour. As the crew began making urgent communications, Dr. Kim moved to Minjun's side. Captain, I've been analyzing their ship formations and communication patterns. There's something strange about their approach. What do you mean? They're not behaving like a military force preparing for a real battle, she explained. Their ships are positioned for intimidation, not combat. It's like they don't expect any serious resistance. Reader. Minjun looked out at the alien fleet again. The ships were impressive and clearly powerful, but Dr. Kim was right. They were arranged to look threatening, not to fight a war. You think they're not used to anyone fighting back? He asked. 847 worlds, Doctor. Kim said thoughtfully. That's a lot of conquests. But if every species surrendered quickly, they might not have much experience with actual combat. Admiral Lee overheard their conversation. Are you suggesting these aliens might not be as unbeatable as they want us to think? Quote, R.A.T. Quote, I'm suggesting we need to learn more about them before we make any decisions, Doctor. Kim replied. Captain, with your permission, I'd like to begin analyzing everything we can gather about their technology and behavior. Minjun nodded. Do it. And Doctor, work fast. We only have 3 days to figure out if humanity has any chance of surviving this. As alarms began sounding throughout the station, Minjun stared at the alien ships and wondered if Earth was about to face its final hours, or if humanity was about to discover something about itself that even they didn't know existed. Dr. Soo-Young Kim had not slept in 36 hours. Her team worked around the clock in the research facility, buried deep beneath the Swiss mountains. Computer screens filled every wall, showing data streams from satellites, radio telescopes, and monitoring stations around the world. Doctor, we're getting more intercepted communications, called Dr. Sang-Woo Yoon from his workstation. The young physicist looked exhausted but excited. The translation software is finally making sense of their language. Soo-Young hurried over to his station. The Corvan language was complex, but patterns were emerging. What are they saying? Orders to their ship captains, Sang-Woo explained, pointing at the scrolling text. Look at this one. General Vexthara is telling them to maintain intimidation formations and prepare for standard occupation procedures. Standard procedures? Colonel Hee-Jin Choi looked up from her intelligence analysis. The military officer had been studying Corvan tactics for the past day. That suggests they've done this many times before. The military officer had been studying Corvan. Soo-Young nodded grimly. How many times, exactly? Have we been able to confirm their claim about conquering 847 worlds? Actually, yes, said Ambassador Elena Rodriguez, who had just arrived from an emergency meeting with world leaders. She looked pale and tired. Our deep space monitoring stations picked up data from their ship computers. They're not lying about the number of conquered worlds. The room fell silent. The weight of that number was crushing. Nearly 900 alien civilizations had fallen to the Corvan Empire. But here's what's interesting, Colonel Choi continued, pulling up tactical displays. I've been analyzing the patterns of their previous conquests. In every case, The target species surrendered within 72 hours. Most gave up within 24 hours. Dr. Yoon frowned. Every single species? Every one, Choi confirmed. The Korvans would arrive, make their demands, demonstrate their weapons on an uninhabited area, and the local government would immediately agree to pay tribute. Soo-young studied the data carefully. Her scientific mind was looking for patterns that others might miss. Show me the details about their weapons demonstrations. Colonel Choi brought up a series of reports. They would typically destroy a moon, an asteroid, or sometimes an empty piece of land. Enough to show their power, but nothing that would actually harm the local population. Interesting, Soo-young murmured. They avoid killing people during the demonstration phase. Why would that matter? Ambassador Rodriguez asked. Because it suggests they need the population intact, Soo-young explained. Dead slaves can't work. Destroyed cities can't produce resources. They need their victims alive and productive. Why? Tensev. Dr. Yoon was studying ship schematics on his screen. Doctor, look at this. I've been analyzing their ship designs based on our telescope observations. These vessels are massive, but most of the space is devoted to cargo holds and intimidation features. What do you mean by intimidation features? Lights, decorative armor, weapons that look scary but might not be very practical. Yoon explained. It's like they built these ships to look terrifying rather than to fight wars. Colonel Choi leaned over to examine Yoon's analysis. You're saying their ships are designed for psychological warfare, not actual combat? Exactly, Yoon said, getting excited. Look at these weapon placements. They're positioned for maximum visual impact, but they would be terrible for ship-to-ship combat. And the armor is thickest on the areas that face forward, where their victims can see them. Soo-young felt a spark of hope. What about their actual military capabilities? That's the strangest part, Colonel Choi said, bringing up more data. Based on our analysis of their communications and ship movements, these aliens have never fought a real war. Every encounter they've had followed the same pattern. Ambassador Rodriguez looked shocked. Are you telling me that the mighty Korvan Empire has never actually had to fight for their conquests? It looks that way, Soo-young confirmed. Think about it logically. If you've conquered hundreds of worlds without a single battle, you would start to believe you're invincible. But you would also have no experience dealing with real resistance. Doctor. Yoon pulled up another set of data. There's something else. Their ships are designed for orbital bombardment, not space combat. Those weapons are meant to attack planets, not other ships. So if someone actually fought back in space, Colonel Choi began, they might not know how to respond. Soo-young finished. Their entire military doctrine is based on intimidation and threats. They've never had to adapt to an enemy that refuses to surrender. The implications were staggering. Ambassador Rodriguez sat down heavily. But even if they're not experienced fighters, they still have advanced technology and massive ships. True, Colonel Choi admitted. But advanced technology means nothing if you don't know how to use it properly. And big ships are just big targets if they're not designed for actual combat. Soo-young was thinking fast, her mind racing through possibilities. What do we know about their psychology? How do they react to unexpected situations? From what we can tell from their communications, they're very rigid in their thinking, Doctor. Yoon reported. Everything follows strict protocols. They don't seem comfortable with improvisation. That could be a weakness, Colonel Choi observed. Rigid minds have trouble adapting when their plans don't work. Ambassador Rodriguez stood up, looking more hopeful than she had since the crisis began. So, you're telling me we might actually have a chance? I'm telling you we need to consider all possibilities, Soo-young said carefully. The Korvans are powerful, but they might not be as unbeatable as they want us to believe. What would we need to actually fight them? The ambassador asked. Colonel Choi smiled grimly. That's the beautiful part. We've been preparing for space-based threats for decades. Our orbital defense platforms, lunar bases, and hidden military installations were designed exactly for this kind of scenario. Hidden installations? Rodriguez looked surprised. The Global Defense Council has been building secret military bases throughout the solar system for 50 years, Choi explained. Asteroid mining stations that are actually weapons platforms, research stations with hidden missile silos. Even some commercial satellites have defensive capabilities. Choi. Dr. Yoon was getting excited again. And if their ships aren't designed for real combat, our weapons might be more effective than they expect. Su Young nodded slowly. There's something else to consider. The psychological impact on the Corvins themselves. They've never faced real resistance. How will they react when someone actually fights back? Fear, Colonel Choi said immediately. Bullies always react with fear when their victims refuse to be victims. But would that be enough? Ambassador Rodriguez asked. Maybe, Su Young said thoughtfully. But there's only one way to find out. The room fell quiet as everyone considered the implications. Humanity was facing its greatest challenge. But for the first time since the aliens arrived, they had reason to believe they might survive. Dr. Yoon broke the silence. Doctor, there's one more thing. I intercepted a communication from General Vex Thera to his commanders. He's expecting our surrender within the next 36 hours. He's already planning the occupation ceremony. 1. I was not. Su Young smiled coldly. Then maybe it's time to give the general a surprise he'll never forget. Captain Min Jun Park stood in the shuttle bay, adjusting his dress uniform one final time. In his hand, he carried a simple data pad containing Earth's official response to the Corvan demands. The weight of humanity's future rested in that small device. Sir, are you sure about this? Lieutenant Chen asked from the pilot's seat. The alien ship could be a trap. Everything about this situation is a trap, Minjun replied calmly. But sometimes the only way out of a trap is to walk straight through it. The shuttle approached the massive Corvan flagship. Up close, the alien vessel was even more intimidating than it had appeared from the station. Dark metal plates covered its hull, decorated with sharp spikes and glowing red lights that pulsed like a heartbeat. Everything about the ship was designed to inspire fear. As they docked, Minjun could feel the artificial gravity shift to accommodate the heavier Corvan physiology. The air felt thicker and smelled of ozone and something metallic that made his nose wrinkle. General Vex Thera waited in the main conference room, surrounded by his officers. The Corvan leader looked pleased and confident, his tail swishing slowly behind him. He clearly expected to receive humanity's surrender. Captain Park, the general said with what might have been a smile on his reptilian features, I trust your leaders have made the wise choice. They have indeed made a choice, Minjun replied, not moving to sit in the chair that had been provided for him. He preferred to stand. Excellent, Vex Thera said, gesturing for his aide to bring forward a contract pad. The standard tribute agreements are already prepared. Your species will provide the required resources and workers according to... General, Minjun interrupted quietly. I think there has been a misunderstanding. Vex Thera's yellow eyes narrowed. What kind of misunderstanding? Minjun activated his datapad and began reading from it. The people of Earth have considered your demands carefully. After much discussion, our leaders have reached a unanimous decision. Good, the general said. But something in Minjun's tone made him shift uneasily in his chair. We refuse, Minjun said simply. The room fell completely silent. Vex Thera's officers looked shocked, as if they had never heard those words before. The general himself stared at Minjun with an expression of complete confusion. You refuse? Vex Thera repeated slowly, as if the words didn't make sense in his mouth. Completely and utterly, Minjun confirmed. We will not pay tribute. We will not provide slaves. And we will not submit to your empire in any way. The general's confusion quickly turned to anger. His scales seemed to darken, and his tail began lashing violently. "You cannot refuse. No species refuses the Corvan Empire." "Well," Minjun said calmly, "now you've met one that does. Do you not understand what will happen to your world?" Vex Thera roared, rising to his full height. "We will destroy your cities. We will burn your forests. We will turn your oceans to steam." Minjun nodded thoughtfully. "You might. You certainly have the power to kill a lot of us. But here's what you don't understand about humans, General. We have stories about creatures like you." "Stories?" Vex Thara looked even more confused. "In our folklore, we tell tales about evil beings who come to threaten innocent people. And do you know what happens to them in our stories?" The Corvan general was staring at him now, clearly not understanding where this was going. "They meet Baba Yaga," Minjun continued. "Baba Yaga is the monster that monsters should fear. When evil comes calling, demanding tribute, and threatening the innocent, Baba Yaga appears to destroy it." "You speak nonsense," Vex Thara snarled. "Fairy tales and children's stories." "Perhaps," Minjun agreed. "But here's the thing about fairy tales, General. Sometimes they come true. You came to Earth expecting sheep. Instead, you found wolves." One of the Corvan officers leaned forward nervously. "General, perhaps we should simply begin the bombardment. This human seems unstable." But Vex Thera was studying Minjun's face carefully. Despite his anger, the general was intelligent enough to recognize that something was different about this encounter. In 847 previous conquests, no representative had ever spoken to him like this. "You would choose death over submission?" Vex Thara asked. "We choose to be the nightmare that evil should fear," Minjun replied. "You see, General, you made a critical error in judgment. You assumed that because we appear weak, we actually are weak. You thought that because other species surrendered to you, we would do the same. Your weapons cannot match ours," the general said, but his voice lacked its earlier confidence. "You're absolutely right," Minjun agreed. "But weapons alone don't win wars. Will does. Determination does. And the absolute refusal to be a victim does." Minjun activated another section of his datapad. "Let me tell you what's going to happen, General. You're going to order your ships to attack Earth. And when you do, you're going to discover something that none of your previous victims ever showed you." "And what is that?" "What happens when someone fights back?" Minjun said quietly. "You've spent so long conquering the terrified and the helpless that you've forgotten what war actually looks like. But we haven't." Vex Thera's tail stopped moving. For the first time since the conversation began, he looked uncertain. "You're bluffing," he said finally. "Your primitive technology cannot threaten our fleet." Minjun smiled, and there was something cold in that expression that made the Corvan officers shift nervously. "General, you're about to find out exactly how primitive we actually are." He turned toward the door, then paused and looked back. "Oh, and General, when this is over, when your fleet is burning and your empire is crumbling, remember this moment. Remember that you had the chance to leave Earth peacefully. Remember that we offered you the opportunity to simply go away and never come back." "You dare threaten me?" Vex Thara roared. "I'm not threatening you," Minjun replied calmly. "I'm explaining to you why you're about to lose everything you've built. Baba Yaga doesn't make threats, General. Baba Yaga makes promises." As Minjun walked out of the conference room, he could hear the general screaming orders behind him. The bombardment would begin within the hour. But for the first time since the aliens had arrived, Minjun felt something he hadn't expected to feel again: hope. Because somewhere above Earth, a species that had never known real resistance was about to discover what humans were truly capable of when their backs were against the wall. The shuttle bay doors closed behind him as he headed back toward Earth. Behind him, the Corvan fleet prepared for what they expected would be a simple demonstration of power. They were about to learn that some demonstrations go both ways. Admiral Young-Ho Lee stood in Earth's primary command center, watching the tactical displays as the Corvan fleet moved into bombardment position. Around him, officers from every nation worked together with a precision that would have been impossible just a week ago. The threat of extinction had a way of making old enemies into allies. "Sir, Captain Park's shuttle has cleared the alien fleet," reported Colonel Choi from her station. "He's requesting permission to dock with Orbital Station 3. "Granted," Lee replied, never taking his eyes off the main display. "How much time do we have?" "Based on their formation changes, I estimate 15 minutes before they begin bombardment," answered Dr. Yoon from his technical analysis station. Lee nodded grimly. 15 minutes to find out if humanity's desperate gamble would work, or if Earth was about to become the 848th world to fall to the Corvan Empire. "All stations report ready," announced Commander Lisa Jang from the communications center. "Hidden installations throughout the solar system are standing by. Lunar Base 7 is online," added Major Chen Rodriguez. "Mass drivers loaded and ready." "Asteroid Platform Network confirms operational status," reported another officer. Lee allowed himself a small smile. The Corvans had made their first mistake when they assumed Earth's defenses were limited to what they could see. Humanity had been preparing for this day for decades, building hidden weapons, platforms disguised as mining operations, research stations, and commercial satellites. "Sir, the alien fleet is powering up their weapons," Colonel Choi called out urgently. "Energy readings are off the charts." On the main screen, the massive Corvan ships began to glow with ominous red light. Weapon ports opened along their hulls like hungry mouths, revealing the devastating firepower that had convinced 800 worlds to surrender without a fight. "General Vex Thara is broadcasting on all frequencies," the communications officer announced. "He's demanding one final chance for Earth to surrender." "Ignore it," Lee ordered. "Let them make the first move." The first Corvan energy beam lanced down toward Earth's surface, targeting an uninhabited area in the Pacific Ocean. The beam struck the water and vaporized a section of ocean several miles across, sending a massive cloud of steam into the atmosphere. It was an impressive demonstration of power, designed to terrify Earth's population into submission. Instead, it was the signal Lee had been waiting for. "All units, this is command," he spoke into his microphone. "Execute Operation Baba Yaga." What happened next shattered every assumption the Corvans had made about human capabilities. The first surprise came from Luna. What the aliens had dismissed as a simple research base suddenly revealed itself as a massive weapons platform. Magnetic acceleration cannons, hidden beneath fake mining equipment, launched tungsten rods at incredible speed toward the Corvan fleet. "Direct hit on the lead cruiser," reported Major Rodriguez. "Their shields are fluctuating." But that was only the beginning. Throughout the asteroid belt, mining stations that had seemed abandoned suddenly came to life. Hidden missile silos opened, launching swarms of nuclear-tipped projectiles that had been disguised as ore containers. "Sir, reading massive energy spikes from the Corvan flagship," Colonel Choi called out. "They're trying to target our lunar installations." "Activate the satellite network," Lee ordered. High above Earth, hundreds of commercial satellites suddenly revealed their true purpose. Solar panels folded back to expose laser arrays, while communication dishes transformed into targeting systems. The satellites that the Corvans had ignored as primitive technology began coordinating a devastating crossfire. General Vex Thara's voice crackled over the communication system, no longer confident and threatening. "What is this? Where are these weapons coming from?" "From everywhere," Admiral Lee replied calmly, knowing the Corvan general could hear him. "You see, General, we've been expecting visitors like you for a very long time." The battle was unlike anything the Corvan Empire had ever experienced. Instead of facing a helpless world begging for mercy, they found themselves under attack from multiple directions by an enemy that had turned their entire solar system into a weapon. Corvin formation is breaking apart, Dr. Yoon reported excitedly. They're not used to fighting an enemy that shoots back. And that was the Corvin's fatal weakness. For centuries, they had relied on intimidation and overwhelming displays of power to force quick surrenders. They had never developed real combat tactics because they had never needed them. Now, facing an enemy that refused to be intimidated, their rigid military doctrine was crumbling. "Sir, we're receiving distress calls from the alien ships," the communications officer announced. "Several of their vessels are requesting retreat orders." Lee studied the tactical display. The Corvin ships were powerful, but they were designed for bombardment, not ship-to-ship combat. Their weapons were meant to attack defenseless planets, not mobile targets that could fight back. Worse, their crews had no experience with real warfare. "Captain Park is requesting permission to lead Attack Group 7, Colonel Choi reported. "He says he has a personal message for General Vex Thera." "Permission granted," Lee replied. "Tell him to make it count." Captain Minjun Park piloted his fighter through the chaos of battle, leading a squadron of Earth's most experienced pilots toward the Corvin flagship. The massive alien vessel was trying to retreat, but its own rigid formation was working against it. "This is Captain Park to General Vex Thera," he broadcast on the Corvin command frequency. "Are you beginning to understand what Baba Yaga means?" The reply came crackling with static and panic. "This is impossible. Your species should have surrendered." "But we didn't," Park replied as his squadron began their attack run on the flagship's engines. "And that's the difference between us and the 800 worlds you conquered. We choose to be the monsters that monsters should fear." The human fighters swarmed around the Corvin flagship like angry insects, targeting specific systems that Dr. Yoon's analysis had identified as vulnerable. The aliens' shields, designed to stop massive bombardment weapons, were ineffective against small, fast targets attacking from multiple angles. "Their command ship is losing power," Major Rodriguez reported from the lunar base. "Main engines are offline." Admiral Lee watched the battle unfold with grim satisfaction. The Corvin fleet, which had seemed invincible just hours ago, was now in full retreat. Several ships had been destroyed, others were drifting powerless, and the remainder were fleeing toward the edge of the solar system. But General Vex Thera wasn't finished. In a desperate move that spoke more of panic than strategy, he ordered his damaged flagship to attempt a kamikaze run toward Earth's surface. "Sir, the command ship is heading directly for North America," Colonel Choi called out urgently. "Impact in 7 minutes." "Not if we stop him first," Admiral Lee replied coldly. "All platforms. Target the flagship. Everything we have." The combined firepower of Earth's entire hidden defense network focused on the falling Corvin ship. Laser beams from satellites, mass driver rounds from the moon, and missiles from every conceivable direction converged on General Vex Thera's vessel. The flagship's shields collapsed under the massive assault. Its hull began to break apart, and its engines finally failed completely. The great ship that had carried the terror of the Corvin Empire across the galaxy tumbled helplessly through space, no longer a threat to anyone. "General Vex Thera, this is Admiral Lee," the human commander broadcast. "Surrender now, and we'll allow your surviving crew to live." The reply was barely a whisper. "How? How did you defeat us?" "We told you," Lee replied. "We're not your typical victims. We're Baba Yaga, and Baba Yaga doesn't lose to bullies." 3 weeks after the battle, Captain Minjun Park stood in what used to be General Vex Thera's command chamber aboard the captured Corvin flagship. The massive ship now orbited Earth as a symbol of humanity's unexpected victory, its weapons systems dismantled, and its crew held as prisoners of war. General Vex Thera sat in a simple chair, no longer the terrifying conqueror who had demanded Earth's surrender. His scales had lost their dark luster, and his yellow eyes held a haunted look that spoke of a worldview completely shattered. The creature who had never known defeat was struggling to understand how his mighty empire had been brought low by a species he had dismissed as primitive. "I don't understand," Vex Thera said quietly, speaking to Minjun but staring at the floor. We have conquered hundreds of worlds. Our technology is superior. Our ships are more powerful. How did you defeat us? Minjun sat down across from the former general, no longer seeing an enemy, but rather a being who had never learned an important lesson about the universe. Because you never understood what real strength is. Oh so. Our weapons, Vexthara began. Your weapons are impressive. Minjun agreed, but they're tools of intimidation, not war. You built them to frighten, not to fight. When someone actually fought back, your entire strategy collapsed. Dr. Soo-young Kim entered the chamber, carrying a datapad filled with intelligence gathered from the captured Corvan ships. General, we've been studying your empire's history. 847 conquests, and not one real battle among them. Vexthara looked up at her with confusion. Battle was unnecessary. Our power spoke for itself. No. Dr. Kim corrected gently. Your reputation spoke for itself. There's a difference. You became so used to easy victories that you forgot how to handle real resistance. The implications were staggering. The mighty Corvan Empire, which had terrorized the galaxy for centuries, had been built entirely on bluff and intimidation. When they finally encountered a species willing to call that bluff, their entire system had collapsed like a house of cards. What happens now? Vexthara asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Minjun smiled, but there was no cruelty in it. Now you get to learn about human justice. We're not going to enslave your people or demand tribute from your worlds. We're going to do something your empire never considered. What? We're going to help the species you conquered become free again. The shock on Vexthara's face was complete. In all his years as a conqueror, he had never imagined that victory could lead to liberation rather than oppression. Admiral Jung-Ho Lee arrived with a team of human officers and several alien delegates. These were representatives from worlds that had been enslaved by the Corvan Empire, beings who had traveled across the galaxy when they heard the impossible news that someone had actually defeated their oppressors. General, Admiral Lee said formally, I want you to meet some people whose lives you destroyed. The alien delegates were from different species, but they all shared the same expression of wonder and hope. A tall, blue-skinned being, named Zara, spoke first, her voice trembling with emotion. Is it true? She asked Minjun. Did you really defeat the Corvan fleet? We did, Minjun confirmed. And we're prepared to help your worlds break free from the Empire. Another delegate, a small creature covered in silver fur, stepped forward. Why would you help us? What do you want in return? Nothing. Admiral Lee replied simply. Freedom isn't something that should be sold or traded. It's a right that every intelligent being deserves. The concept was so alien to beings who had lived under Corvan rule that several of the delegates began to weep. They had never imagined that a species with the power to defeat their oppressors would use that power to help rather than conquer. Dr. Kim activated a holographic display showing a map of known space. Red dots marked worlds under Corvan control, while green dots showed species that had already begun throwing off their chains after learning of Earth's victory. The rebellion has already started, she explained. 17 worlds have declared independence in the past 2 weeks. The Corvan Empire is collapsing as we speak. Vexthara stared at the map in horror. Everything he had built, everything his species had worked for, was crumbling because one small blue world had refused to surrender. This will bring chaos to the galaxy, he whispered. No, Captain Park corrected. This will bring freedom to the galaxy. There's a difference. If. Colonel Heijin Choi entered the chamber with an urgent report. Sirs, we're receiving communications from the Corvan homeworld. Their High Council is requesting negotiations. Admiral Lee nodded. Tell them we'll talk, but only about the terms of their surrender and the liberation of their slave worlds. You would spare our homeworld? Vexthara asked in amazement. We're not conquerors, Minjun explained. We don't want to rule other species. We just want everyone to be free to live their own lives in peace. The former general shook his head slowly. I still don't understand. You have the power to build an empire even greater than ours. Why don't you take it? Doctor, Kim smiled sadly. Because that's not who we are. In our stories, Baba Yaga doesn't become the monster she destroys. She eliminates evil and then disappears until she's needed again. Over the following months, the galaxy watched in amazement as humanity kept its word. Instead of building an empire, Earth helped coordinate the liberation of enslaved worlds. Human ships carried supplies and advisors to planets throwing off Corvan rule, but they never stayed as occupiers. The Corvan Empire, which had seemed eternal just months before, dissolved into dozens of independent worlds. Some chose to continue working together in a new, voluntary federation. Others preferred complete independence. The humans supported whatever choice each world made. General Vexthera, still held as a prisoner but treated with dignity, gradually began to understand what had happened. His species had built their empire on fear, but humans had built their strength on something far more powerful: the simple refusal to accept injustice. Captain Park, he said during one of their regular conversations, I think I finally understand what you meant about Baba Yaga. Oh? She appears when evil threatens the innocent, Vexthara said slowly. But she doesn't replace the evil with new evil. She destroys it, and then lets good grow in its place. Minjun nodded. That's exactly right. Baba Yaga isn't about conquest or domination. She's about protection and justice. The former general was quiet for a long moment. What will happen to me? That depends on you, Minjun replied. Do you want to spend the rest of your life in prison? Or do you want to help undo some of the damage your empire caused? It was an offer no one had expected the humans to make, least of all Vexthera himself. But it was perfectly in character for a species that had chosen to be protectors rather than conquerors. As reports continued to arrive of worlds celebrating their newfound freedom, Captain Minjun Park stood on the observation deck of Earth's orbital station and watched the stars. Somewhere out there, beings who had never known hope were learning what it meant to be free. Humanity had become exactly what the galaxy needed: the monsters that monsters should fear, and the friends that the innocent could trust. Baba Yaga had indeed awakened, and the galaxy would never be the same.